Now I've come across some images on webcams. I do go to the Austrian webcam quite a lot, and I've come across a strange object. As the sun goes down, you see the plasma, and behind the sun this shape appears, this red celestial shape. Now we've seen this object on many webcams. It can't be a lens flare, because a lens flare travels with the sun as it's showing on a cam or a camera. You can see this so obviously. Anyway, so let's show you this and these webcams. Okay, now this is the webcam, and what you're seeing is the plasma from the sun as it goes down at 5:06. We're seeing that pink haze as well to the left side. But let me just move the cam. You'll see this as well. Here it is. Now, indeed, something is happening, because if it was a lens flare, we would see it if the sun was in the sky, not on sundown. There would be no lens flare. So, as it's going down, you can see this pink reflection cutting through, this pink colour reflecting on this machinery here as well. So let me just move onto this. Okay, what I've done is I've zoomed into the cam, so let me just try and get this to move back. Now again, this is the plasma of the sun when it's going down. You can see that colour again, can't you? But as I'm reversing the cam, okay, I'm reversing this, but you can start to see that red colour here. But as we carry on, here it is again. Something else, isn't it? Let me zoom in here. Okay, I've zoomed in, and it just is clearly something that's visible, that's out there. But what really is strange is the light reflection is this way. Okay, something else reflecting through. It can't be the moon. And also there's another reflection that's cutting through as well. Look at this pink reflection that's coming across. I believe that NASA can see this. They can see it clearly, and they don't want us to see this. It's being covered up. There's too much of a pink colour in our skies all across Earth. There's far too many people that are saying through emails that they're seeing this pink colour. So again, I mean, look on the webcams. It is really important to keep monitoring what's going on. This is the same webcam, okay? Now I've moved it down to 9:45. Please keep an eye on this area here, because what we're going to see is cloud formations, but there is a red celestial shape behind those clouds. If I can try and get this. Okay, now you see the cloud system, but if you look closely you can see that there's something spherical here. You can see this shape. It is strange, isn't it? And also look at the timestamp, 10:49, and when we go through the cam it gets very, very dark in the skies. 11:54, and then it goes to the 12 o'clock mark. We're still seeing a pink reflection and very, very dark skies. So whatever that is, it does indeed look very strange, doesn't it? There it is. Let me zoom into this. What I've done is I've kept the timestamp 10:49 in Austria. So we're looking at the northeast skies, but something is showing itself, isn't it? Can you see how dark it is to the right and left side here and here? Dark skies above. Just another image on a webcam that just interested me to show that there's something that's going on, because how can this object, again, you're seeing this behind the cloud formations. Okay, now we're on this different webcam as well that's in Austria. Now I want to show you this. Is quite interesting too, because when the this white object rises in the skies as Earth is rotating, you will see to the right hand side two other objects show themselves. Now again, you can see the timestamp there, can't you? 8:34 AM. But when the sun is moving across the sky, these other objects fade to the distance. Now, again, these heavenly bodies are on an elliptical orbit. Now, again, we've just got to think out the box. Could be anything else, but looking at this just really interested me because, again, it can't be anything else, because if it was a flare, it would follow with the area that we would see of the sun. So let's have a look at this. See if I can move this now. Okay, this is the shot. As you're seeing the reflector that's rising to the right side, it's very, very dark. Even on the snow, on the mountain, you can see a pink colour, can't you? Now, we are seeing that reflector, but to the right side, we're seeing something else. It's pink as well. It's a reddish colour, and it's there, isn't it? Let me zoom into this. Here it is. Now, I've been to these webcams before, and I've not noticed anything like that. There's no rain droplets on this webcam. It's just a clean, high-definition webcam. And the skies are clear, showing, again, what you're seeing is something else. Now, when you look at this carefully, if it was a flare, you would see it in front to this left side. You would see this, again, this shine from the reflector. It's behind it. It's way out there. Something else. There's markings here and here as well. Let me carry on moving the cam because something else happens. Okay, now I've zoomed back out again. I'm trying to move this cam, but I'm having some difficulty with it. For some reason it's slowing down. When I tap it, it's not jumping across. I've tried this several times. Let's try and get this sorted. Okay, now it's jumped across. Where you're seeing now this reflector, there's something here and here. Now, are these the objects that we saw that were here and here just a few minutes ago? Because let me just try and jump this, because it's annoying when it doesn't work. It's taking its time. Ah, there you go. Can you see these? Now, again, I've not seen these before. And then when you try and jump, I hope it does work, I really do. Just try and get this to jump back again. It's taking its time. I apologise about this, I really do. Here we go. There it is again. But the skies here are dark as well. This is at 15:07. Now, I've spoke about the 3 o'clock time as well, where the skies become dark too. So let me just zoom into these here. Now, the thing that really gets me going on this situation is that we're seeing some cloud formations just here. That's in front. It's in front of these shapes. I mean, look at the shape of these objects. Now, again, indeed, a lens flare would not do this. It would move and follow that we see of the sun. It wouldn't just go behind it and disappear on the horizon. Now, again, I've looked at other images and photos and footage and seen this red-pink haze that shows itself on the horizon and goes down to the northeast skies. But again, we just got to think out the box. It could be the moon, it could be Jupiter, it could be anything. So let me just try and get this back again. Here it is here. Let me just zoom back out. Okay, well, again, I've got to think out the box. So I'm now going to finish off this video, and I'm going to work on the next video to show all the images coming through, because the truth needs to come out, because we're not getting any answers off news media, are we? No answers at all. So take care, and I'll be back very, very shortly from Matt Rogers.
Some very, very dark skies, and in some rain, obviously, with the windshield wipers going. Let's hope that they're not doing what we call sometimes entering the bear's cage, coming out of the rain right into a rain-wrapped tornado at this point.
Members of the District of Columbia National Guard deployed to support government officials and district residents during Winter Storm Jonas. Soldiers and airmen dispatched launched to various locations around D.C., providing support using military vehicles to transport supplies and essential personnel. The district guardsmen also left emergency response vehicles and civilians trapped in the
and left a trail of debris in the city of Koshigaya. Video footage shows what appears to be a tornado. Firefighters and police say the powerful winds ripped through parts of the city and damaged more than 300 buildings.
To 100 meters across. It was one of the largest tornadoes ever in Japan.
Scientists at Japan's meteorological agency have surveyed the damage. They've determined the tornado's strength. They say it measured 1 or higher on a scale between 0 and 5. The scientists say a level 1 tornado packs winds of about 120 to 175 kilometers per hour.
The Vatican knows, and I have some local connections there that I know about the Vatican and what they're doing. The Fortune 100 companies, they're getting ready and being prepared. Creative forensics when it comes to secrets and how military intelligence knows about things before they happen. Because of what I do and what I do professionally, I interact with people involved with law enforcement, including the FBI. Would the federal government of the United States of America lie to you? Creative forensics. Of course they would, and they have for decades. Creative forensics. My first-hand awareness began in year 2000. Two different men, friends of mine, they're both researchers. They approached me and they said, John, there's this thing that's going to happen. We're not sure about the date, but it's going to happen. When it does, there's going to be abrupt climate change. There's going to be 200-mile-an-hour wind. I need to find out if this is true. And my confidential source, a friend of mine, he says, John, it's exactly what you said it is. It's coming. It's going to hit us. It's going to hit us hard. And there's going to be 200-mile-an-hour winds. And there's going to be massive tidal waves and earthquakes and all the rest of all the things that you said.
Scientists are telling us we're heading into a new ice age? What?
The Earth is warming. On what timescale? This year was the hottest year ever. Was that before or after NASA and the NOAA altered the temperature record to make recent years warmer?
Recent research, however, suggests that there is a possibility that this gradual global warming could lead to a relatively abrupt slowing of the ocean's thermal Halian conveyor. That's the Gulf Stream, ladies and gentlemen. which could lead to harsher winter conditions, sharply reduced soil moisture, and more intense winds in certain regions that currently provide a significant fraction of the world's food production. With inadequate preparation, the result could be a significant drop in the human carrying capacity of the Earth's environment. That means people are going to die. That's what that means. What will be happening in the future with abrupt climate change? The science fiction is what's going to cause it. And the science fiction is human activity creating CO2 greenhouse gases. That's the science fiction. And quite frankly, because you can do this from your home if you've got internet access, there's buoys out there in the Atlantic that give 24-hour, 7-day-a-week readings of the ocean temperature. And anybody can do this any place. You don't need to be on a little island off the coast of Scotland. And they're watching the ocean temperature. And then there's a dramatic drop in temperature on one buoy, then another buoy, and so forth. And what they're watching is the North Atlantic thermohaline conveyor, which is also called the Gulf Stream. Just a couple of years ago, there was an announcement that the Gulf Stream had slowed down by 30%. My private sources tell me it's been more than that.
ClimateGate was hype and it's been debunked. The UK Information Commissioner found the ClimateGate scientists guilty of breaking the law by hiding data from the public.
What I learned today is known by the major world governments. I doubt the president of Zimbabwe knows what we're going to talk about. But the heads of England, Canada, United States, Russia, China, they all know, and they're making preparations. The Vatican knows, and I have some local connections there that I know about the Vatican and what they're doing. It's coming, it's going to hit us hard. And it's going to be 200-mile-an-hour winds. And it's going to be massive tidal waves and earthquakes and all the rest of all the things that you said. Because I did pretty quickly learn what would be causing the rising ocean levels and abrupt climate change. At the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks are one of the known safe havens when all these events take place. If you want to get to the heart of the matter, that's the way it's done. You find witnesses who don't know each other that have the same information, and you interview them at different times, different places. On one of the breaks, I have a man walk up and introduce himself to me. He says, "John, I'm in the insurance industry. And we've wondered for years, us in the insurance industry, why is there such a cluster of retired Navy people in the zip codes of the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks? Now I know. Now I got my answer." The Navy knows. Another pistol student of mine, retired Navy guy, I said, "What's the altitude of your new home?" He told me to the foot the altitude of his new home. How many people can do that? Almost nobody. He told me to the foot the altitude of his new home in the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks. How many planets are there in our solar system? 9? Okay. NASA. Never a straight answer. NASA. July 29th, 2005, announced the finding of the 10th planet, named Xena. Do a Google search. They did. Don't take my word for it. NASA announced the finding of the 10th planet, named Xena, 29th of July, 2005. Parade magazine and the Sunday newspaper. It was the front cover of the January 15th, 2006 edition.
Models project a temperature increase of over 2 degrees this century. And these same models overestimated warming over the past 15 years by 400%.
After the NASA press announcement in July of 2005, he calls me up and he says, "John, you're not crazy. There really is a 10th planet." NASA said so. I said, "Thank you very much." There has to be a cause. The cause is the 10th planet. Now, what NASA is calling the 10th planet is not the 10th planet we're concerned about. It's the 10th planet that's referred to in the Bible, also called wormwood. The closer you are to the current equator, whatever that might be, the better off you are when these things happen, if there's a pole shift, because your climate's not going to change all that much. If you're in Miami, Florida, and we have a 20-degree pole shift, you're not going to end up with a really, really bad winter. You're going to have a mild winter. But if you're in Maine and you got a 20-degree pole shift, you could end up with the weather of Siberia real easy. And when this 10th planet comes through our solar system every 3,600 years, it just causes severe problems on our planet. Interacting with the Earth electrically and with gravity both.
Climate denial is a well-funded conspiracy. Actually, the real money is to be made in global warming alarmism.
Professor James McCanny, who is a credentialed scientist, has written a number of books on this. He's a real astrophysical scientist, and he knows about this stuff. I'm a private detective and a researcher. I'm not a scientist. But I can tell you what the scientists say, because I've read their books. And I can tell you what Dr. Velikovsky said, because I've read his books. And I can tell you what the Bible says, because I've read the Bible. And all these things are true, and all these things are in the process of happening right now. Where is all this water going to come from? Up until last year, I was thinking, oh, melting ice at Antarctica, melting ice at Greenland. But how could it melt that fast? Well, it can't melt that fast, even with what we're going through. It turns out the answer was right in front of me all the time. There is a bulge of water at the equator. It turns out that sea level varies as much as 494 feet up and down from that rock in Cornwall, England. Now that's like a 50-story building. I mean, it's a lot of water. And there's a bulge of literally millions of cubic miles, 1 mile by 1 mile by 1 mile, cubic miles, millions of cubic miles of water bulge at the equator of this planet. It wasn't common knowledge for John Moore, I found out. It's not common knowledge for most people. It's held in place by two things, the rotation of the Earth and gravity. Anything that changes our true north, our pole, by more than just a couple of degrees will cause that water to be disrupted. And there's a technical term for it, slosh. And there's records locked up in bones and stone of this having happened in the past. Velikovsky talked about it extensively in his books. Now, from Washington, D.C. to Boston is basically one big city. All that's going to be gone. Going down the coast to Atlanta and down to Florida. Florida, the highest point in Florida is on the Panhandle, 55 feet above sea level. Florida's finished, except for a small part of the isthmus, maybe. And that's a big maybe. Gulf Coast, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi are pretty much going to be gone. In fact, the new mouth of the Mississippi will be at the current Arkansas-Louisiana state line, a couple hundred miles up from where it is right now. Going down around the coast of Texas, Texas will take damage about 100 miles inland. California will take damage 25 to 100 miles inland, depending on a couple of things, the level of the altitude above sea level and seismic activity. On up the west coast to Oregon and Seattle, all coastal areas being damaged 50 to 100 miles inland. And once again, seismic activity is going to play a big role in what happens. Locally in the Midwest, we have something called the New Madrid seismic zone. Once the Mississippi River becomes 50 to 100 miles wide, the U.S. Navy, not John Moore, the U.S. Navy says it will trigger at least 3 9-point+ earthquakes on the New Madrid seismic zone. Southern Illinois will basically be one large swamp. In fact, Southern Illinois is already pretty swampy. If you fly over the Mississippi River right now, you can see where the river used to be. You can see where its banks were at one time. A much, much larger river than it is now.
It's from Time Magazine, Monday, June 24th, 1974.
Yes, to quote the title of Penn and Teller's TV series, this video will look at bullshit, or to put it more politely, urban myths that have grown up around the subject of climate change.
Now, the real timeline. These relocations, which you could call evacuations, are due to have everybody who's part of continuity of government planning. It's not all federal employees. If you work for Health and Human Services, you're toast. There's no place waiting for you in Denver. People in the intelligence agencies, people in certain parts of the military, not all the military. The scientists, the engineers, the doctors that they want to have in these shelters when everything breaks loose. That's who's being relocated, that's who's being sent to these shelters. These shelters are literally hundreds of millions of your tax dollars where people can live and work and have hot showers and pizzas and video movies for years without ever leaving the place and be quite comfortable. And then what we sometimes refer to as a New World Order, which will be basically corporations running everything, banks and corporations, they fully expect to come out on the other side of this intact. The agendas of the people that control the world, the international bankers and the Fortune 500 and so forth, is to have a planet with far less people on it than there is now, either inadvertently through these earth changes or by design, through World War III, a flu pandemic, or severe economic collapse leading to societal disruption, or all three happening at the same time. What we're living in right now is as phase one. Phase one is where normal commerce takes place. We can have our careers, interact with our families and our social events that we normally do, and life appears to be normal. The powers that be are using phase one to finish their final preparations. Phase two will be when these earth changes events, abrupt climate change, bizarre weather, earthquakes, tidal waves, all become so numerous that they become daily news. In fact, when I meet people out in the street, almost everybody comments on how bizarre the weather has become. And that's pretty much a topic of daily discussion. The government, the powers that be, will claim that these bizarre weather-related events are related to global warming. And when they're happening, that we need to start cutting back on our creation of CO2 greenhouse gases. As these events become more severe, you're going to hear more and more men with lab coats from NASA talking about global warming being caused by human activity, and that it will be better and everything's going to be okay, so you can go back to your baseball games and go back to work Monday morning. Things are going to be fine. That's phase two.
I looked at the science of climate change and real research done by experts on both sides of the issue. Now it's the turn of the amateurs. Now, I love Penn and Teller, and I appreciate that bullshit is supposed to be entertainment. But this claim also pops up in internet blogs and even mainstream media.
This is Time magazine in 1975. Another ice age is coming. We're all going to die.
And this is Senator James Inhofe, who not only cites Time, but also this 1975 story in Newsweek. George Will cites a 1975 article in the New York Times. And Michael Crichton makes the claim on page 315 of his book, State of Fear. In the 1970s, he writes, all the climate scientists believed an ice age was coming. But these are all popular newspapers, magazines, and novels, not scientific journals.
It's from Time magazine.
So what, Penn? Time magazine isn't peer-reviewed. It's just as capable of misreporting and sensationalizing stories as any other magazine. Don't just take my word for it. Read the story and tell me exactly where this claim about an ice age comes from. 5 people, all scientists, were named in the story. They all agreed that the Earth had been cooling. Sure, that was evident from the temperature data. But not one of them substantiated Time's line of an impending ice age. And one of them even said the period of cooling was about to end. So where did Time get the idea an ice age was coming? Well, the magazine had to resort to an old journalist trick of inventing a pack of unnamed and unquoted sources. Climatological Cassandras are becoming increasingly apprehensive. That may be, but why couldn't Time magazine find one of these climatological Cassandras? Perhaps because they weren't as numerous as the headline and the hype suggest. The question is, how many climatologists in the 1970s did accept this conclusion of a coming ice age? If you want to find out, it's no good thumbing through Time and Newsweek. Boring as it sounds, you have to look at the scientific literature.
Phase 3 will be a relatively short period of time. It may be a matter of a few days, maybe a week. It won't be long. At some point, people will realize that things are very strange and very dangerous, and they'll start doing things they normally wouldn't do. Most men, and it's mostly men because of the nature of the work they do, some women, who know about what we're talking about today, just simply go about their lives and keep quiet about it. They're not public speakers. They take care of their family, they take care of themselves, and the rest of you are on your own. Phase 4 will be the end of the world as we know it. Once these oceans come up, the infrastructure that supports normal human activity will be wiped out. The housing where 100 million people live will be damaged and or destroyed. The potable water that these people rely on will no longer be potable. The food that they rely on to eat will no longer be available. It will not be a pretty picture. Martial law will be instituted probably before that, which brings to mind these other scenarios. What are you looking at? You're looking at curfews. The curfew could be from 10 o'clock at night to 6 a.m. The curfew could be 24 hours a day. Restrictions of sales of firearms, ammunition, and alcohol. Rationing of fuel, rationing of food, potable water rationing, possibly rationing of electricity. We've seen that in Iraq a lot, depending on what's going on. Martial law is not a fun thing to be part of or live under, even if you're part of the occupying force, because it changes your life. And the Navy says these oceans will come up over a period of about 30 days. Once these events get in motion, these water levels, these oceans, these tsunamis, tidal waves will take place over a period of about 1 month. Altitude. The Navy says that everything 100 feet sea level and below will be completely destroyed. The Navy says everything at 400 feet and below is at risk of being damaged and or destroyed. But there's more to this. There's how close you are to densely populated areas. Now, the Appalachian Mountains, for example, in North Carolina and so forth, would be highly desirable places to be if it wasn't for being so close to literally tens of million people who are going to be hungry and without potable water and without electricity. That's what makes those areas undesirable, even though they will be safe in terms of geology and rising ocean levels. Dollars, if you call dollars money, you would be well advised to maybe be looking at something else for money to store up value for future use, possibly gold coins, possibly silver coins, to store up a lot of value in a compact area, compact space. Before, however, I would get gold coins or silver coins, I think I would look at other aspects of preparedness. That's why I want to focus on the final part of this presentation is preparedness. So let's look at the stepping stones, the building blocks of preparedness. First of all, and most important, is spiritual preparedness. That our American POWs who were incarcerated in POW camps in World War II, our American POWs who had strong spiritual beliefs, were far more likely to survive what went on in POW camps than those who did not. Eating the same food, having the same medical attention, doing the same work, wearing the same clothes, living in the same buildings. Those who had a strong spiritual foundation were far more likely to survive those conditions. We know that for a fact. It's not my job to tell you what your spiritual beliefs should be. My job is to tell you you need to have strong spiritual beliefs, whatever that might be for you. Next comes skills. The skills of a farmer, a gardener. You will be growing your own food. The skills of a paramedic. In a future where things no longer work like we're used to, you're going to be your own paramedic, or you're going to sit there and watch your loved one bleed to death from a chainsaw accident or whatever it might be. An EMT course is 1 semester at your local junior college, maybe $100, $200, and you'll know more about emergency medical matters than 99% of the people in this country. 1 semester at your local junior college. You don't need to worry about passing a test unless you intend to be a paramedic or an EMT. You don't need to worry about taking a test at all. You want to learn the skills, and you want to get a kit equal to your skill level. Now, the paramedic training is 3 more semesters of college on top of that first one, and then you'll have a skill level almost equal to a medical doctor when it comes to emergency medical treatment. The skills of a ham radio operator. I've been in places, I've been in combat, and I know what it's like not to know what's going on. Being able to instantly and effectively communicate with your friends and loved ones, and we found this out during Hurricane Katrina, Two-way radio communication that you control could mean the difference between life and death. In Hurricane Katrina, it was a matter of life and death for many people. The ability to communicate with their loved ones, let them know they were okay, ask for help, or be able to give help. The skills of a backpacker, being able to carry everything you need on your back, your shelter, your clothing, your hygiene needs. Being able to clean yourself out in the field, prepare food out in the field, and do so in a manner that doesn't make you sick. Being able to take water out of a stream and filter it so you can drink it without getting sick. All the things that a backpacker knows, the skills of a soldier. In a severe crisis like Hurricane Katrina, for example, you're your own cop, you're your own soldier, or nobody's protected. That's what it comes down to. You become your own soldier, you become your own police officer, and you protect your loved ones because of these skills that you learn. Animal husbandry. In a severe long-term crisis, having goats and sheep and chickens and ducks and rabbits can mean the difference between a fairly good and healthy diet and one that's terribly lacking in protein. It's extremely difficult to get the protein you need from an all-vegetable diet. Extremely difficult. The skills of a carpenter, of an electrician, of a plumber, things that we may call up a professional to do now, you will be on your own to make these repairs. The skills of an automobile mechanic. All these skills take years to learn, and you can't learn them out of a book, at least not and be very effective. There's some things you can learn out of a book, but without practical application, you're just guessing at how this stuff works.
The first thing you notice is an admission from a lot of scientific bodies that there was great uncertainty about the climate in the 1970s. Okay, but was there any kind of consensus? Well, if all or most climate scientists were predicting another ice age back in the 1970s, there should be lots of scientific papers from that time supporting that conclusion. After all, there are hundreds of scientific papers today supporting anthropogenic climate change. A review published in the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society looked at the scientific literature rather than the popular press. 3 climatologists searched scientific journals between 1965 and 1979, and yes, they found 7 papers predicting not an ice age, but global cooling. The only problem is, they also found 44 articles predicting global warming. Even though the world was cooling in the 1970s and had been for 3 decades, even so, 6 times as many climatologists predicted that the danger was global warming, not global cooling. For the purposes of propagating an urban myth, the claim about a consensus on an imminent ice age simply does the rounds unchecked, even when it's dressed up as science.
I mentioned Wisconsin will be gone. The Great Lakes will become one vast inland sea joining up with Hudson Bay up in Canada. That's what the Navy says. Gone. Wisconsin's gone. It's finished. There's not going to be any more Wisconsin. Florida's gone. Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, finished, gone. Some science in there, some science fiction. The science is about what will happen in the future, abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. The science fiction is what's causing it. It's not man-made greenhouse gases, like he says. That's a distraction. And that tactic was decided on many, many years ago, sometime in the late 70s, early 80s, that they would use that as the pretext to keep people thinking things are going to be okay. The science leaves out something, and the science fiction adds something. Al Gore gives a timeline for when these events are going to happen. Abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. The timeline that Al Gore gives in his movie is the same timeline that the federal government gives out through the NASA Goddard Space Flight Institute. Say that fast 10 times. The NASA Goddard Space Flight Institute, which the Queen, Her Majesty, visited last spring when she was in this country, by the way, because she's got taking a sudden interest in science. It's kind of clever what they did in the movie, the way they said it. But in 2016, things will start to get bad, abrupt climate change and rising ocean levels. Exact same timeline put up.
Hello and welcome back to Planet Nibiru. As always, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who subscribes, likes, and comments on our videos. It's an honor to have you as part of our community. Today, we will be discussing some rather serious news about the comet that has left the orbit of Nibiru and is heading straight towards Earth. As with any celestial body that is headed in our direction, there are many theories and projections as to where it may eventually end up. But this one in particular is intriguing, and according to one doomsday theorist, it might just be the one that finally does us in. It's no surprise that Earth is in the shooting gallery of comets, asteroids, and space debris, as we can see clearly from this depiction. This is what happens in space all the time, we just don't see it. Most of these objects, the ones in red, are called sun divers, and are pulled into our sun by its massive gravity, causing us no concern. But last year, NASA detected an object that could be a comet or an asteroid on a path towards Earth. The space agency claims the mysterious object will pass safely at a distance of nearly 32 million miles from Earth. But one self-proclaimed astronomer has come up with an alternative theory, suggesting that the asteroid could crash into Earth, wiping out cities, continents, and even causing a mega tsunami. The strange object was discovered last year, and it is theorized that over the last 5 years it has traveled inward toward the center of our solar system, passing just under the main asteroid belt and under the orbit of Mars until it will swing just inside Earth's own orbit. The object, which is a blurred line between an asteroid and a comet, was discovered by NASA's NEOWISE mission. Self-proclaimed Russian astronomer Dr. Diomin Damir Zakharovich has said it is heading straight towards our planet. He states, "The object left the Nibiru system in October when Nibiru began spinning counterclockwise around the Sun. Since then, NASA has known it will hit Earth, but they are refusing to tell people. If the asteroid hit Earth," he says, "it could destroy cities, countries, or cause a tsunami that could take out an entire continent. We are all in peril," he states with a stern look on his face. NASA, on the other hand, does not think the object will hit Earth. Instead, it is saying it will pass nearly 32 million miles away from our planet. The trajectory of the object is well understood, and the object is not a threat to the Earth for the foreseeable future, says NASA. What NASA scientists do know is that the object is relatively large, about a half a mile across. It is also quite dark, reflecting only a few % of the light that falls on its surface. Its body resembles a comet in its reflectivity in orbit, but it appears to lack the characteristic dust and gas cloud tail that defines a comet. The object could have cometary origins, said Deputy Principal Investigator James Gerbs Bauer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. But according to reports, Dr. Zakharovich has said that his data reveals a very different background. He claims that the comet or asteroid originated from the planet Nibiru. He says that the object left the Nibiru system in October when Nibiru began spinning counterclockwise around the Sun. Some conspiracy theorists believe that the planet Nibiru is set to enter our solar system this year, after being driven here by the gravitational force from a binary star twin of our Sun. They go on to claim that this accounts for the strange weather patterns, uptick in earthquakes, and volcanoes worldwide. Nibiru, sometimes referred to as Planet X, is a hypothesized planet, small star, or mini-solar system on the edge of our own solar system. NASA itself claims that there is evidence that there is something large at the edge of our solar system that is causing perturbations in the planetary orbits and possibly causing a large amount of asteroids to be hurled towards our Sun. Some of these come into contact with Earth's orbit, such as the Chelyabinsk meteorite that exploded over Russia on February 15th of 2013. The existence of an extrasolar entity large enough to cause these problems was also proposed by astronomers at Caltech in January last year. Conspiracy theorists believe that the gravitational influence of the rogue planet Nibiru disrupted the orbits of other planets hundreds of years ago, and perhaps even caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. They go on to surmise that the next disruptive passage into the solar system could happen at any time. So get in the comment section and let us know what you think. Do you think that this rogue asteroid could cause Earth a problem? Do you believe that the Nibiru system will finally make its grand entrance sometime in 2017? Do you think that Nibiru is at the center of all of the weather anomalies, the uptick in earthquakes and volcanism that we're seeing worldwide? Please let us know. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with another video very soon.
On today's program, I interview Marshall Masters. Marshall Masters is a former CNN Science Features news producer, freelance writer, television analyst, and the publisher of MarshallMasters.com. Since 1999, he has been researching Earth changes and Nibiru flyby-related topics including sustainable survival communities, catastrophic crop circles, impact events, and future technologies. To learn more about Marshall Masters, visit MarshallMasters.com. In this presentation, we discuss his article, Is Planet X Nearing Perihelion? And how to prepare for the coming worldwide mass extinction event known as Planet X. Like the show, comment below, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy the show. Marshall Masters, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
Marshall, before we get going here, is Planet X and Nibiru the same thing?
Yes. And actually, what we talk about is the Planet X system, because we have a brown dwarf star that's a small companion star to Sol, which is called Nemesis. When I was in high school, many eons and hairlines ago, that was the big rage. Everybody was talking about, do we live in a binary star system? Because 90% of the solar systems in our galaxy have multiple suns. And there's a lot to indicate that we as well, are living in a binary or maybe even a trinary system. And Nemesis is a mini constellation. Nemesis is in this comet-like orbit clockwise around the sun, spends most of its time in the southern skies below us. When it bounces up into the northern skies, reaches its point of perihelion, its closest distance to the sun, and then heads back south, that's when things start to really go south for us. And that's the bad time. And so it has planets and moons around it. And like, in our solar system, we have major planets, we have minor planets, all right? And the same with that. I talk about the Nemesis star and its three major planets, which are innermost, which is Helion, and Helion is a bright gaseous star-like planet. And then there's Arbota, which is the second out from Nemesis, and that is a small rocky planet and habitable. And then the third, which is Nibiru. Nibiru is the outermost, and actually the name Nibiru stands for the planet of crossing. And so when we're talking about Nibiru and we're talking about Nemesis, we're talking about the same mini constellation. The term Planet X was really brought into existence by the astronomer Percival Lowell. And there's been an ongoing search for this thing for hundreds of years. When we talk about Uranus, that was the first planet that was discovered with a telescope. But Neptune was the first planet discovered with mathematics. And what happened was that they knew where Neptune was because of the perturbations they observed in the orbit of Uranus. And literally just, zoomed right in on it mathematically. And once they made that determination, it was very, very quickly discovered. And then Neptune was observed to have similar perturbations. And then astronomers back then understood that there was this ongoing search for Neptune's perturber, which the term Planet X just simply means there's something big out there, but
We're not exactly sure as to where to find it, but we know it exists by the manner in which it interacts with other objects in our solar system. And so that was the big reason why Percival Lowell founded the Lowell Observatory. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at. We have a mini constellation coming through. That's the reason why I call it the Planet X system. It's just, when I first started, it was just Planet X. But as we learn more about what we're dealing with, then I started calling it a system, because that's really what it is. It's a mini, or more specifically, it's a mini constellation.
When I was a kid in the mid-'80s, we all talked about Planet X. We understood it to be the undiscovered planet beyond Pluto.
Correct. And so, yep, you guys were, and interestingly enough, there was an awful lot of really good reporting in mainstream media about Planet X. And then it just all died. And it didn't die from a lack of interest. It died because there was a concerted effort to kill the topic. And that really came into being after the 1983 IRAS mission. And whistleblowers who saw the original files on this, and this comes from different whistleblowers with same access to the same files. And these gentlemen, Bob Dean is one. I think he's a very, very fine gentleman. And he's really getting on up there. I don't even know if he's still with us. But there were others. And interestingly enough, they weren't the officers who knew this information. They were non-commissioned officers, the guys with all the chevrons up and down on their slaves. And because these are the guys that they would put in the secrets vaults, and they would have the key to all the secrets. Now, if you were an officer, you had different levels of security, and you could see this, but you couldn't see that. But for these sergeants who were in charge of maintaining all of this, they had the absolute highest security level, because they had the key to the kingdom. They could see anything. And they didn't have a lot of folks coming down and asking them for things as a rule. So what do? You're sitting there kind of bored, and you start pulling out file jackets and readings. And these guys would start reading about all of this, and it would just drop them on their head. And because IRAS found Nemesis, and it just showed up like a sore thumb. Now, it was in the infrared. Now, here's the thing about brown dwarf stars. And they're actually stars that have just been recently discovered. And what we're finding is that they're far more common in our solar system, in our galaxy, than our type of star. Far more common. And these things are, in terms of their mass, they're about 10 to 15 times that of Jupiter, and several times larger than Jupiter in radius. But when you compare that with a sun the size of ours, that's like saying, you got a hummingbird orbiting a buffalo. So, because mass is really what determines it. And the thing about a brown dwarf star is that they can support life, but they're very dirty. And the reason why they're dirty, and that in turn makes them incredibly difficult to observe, that's the reason why it's a Johnny-come-lately to astronomy, is that they ignite like our sun did, and then, however, they lack the ability to maintain a nuclear furnace, so to speak. And so our sun continues burning brightly because it has the mass. The brown dwarf doesn't. And so it's more like the charcoal briquettes in your backyard barbecue, and they get white and then they bank off, And if you're into barbecue, that, you want to wait until your coals get it, nice and white. And then they're at their peak, and that's when you put on the meat, because then they start banking off, and you're not going to wind up with an overcooked outer and an undercooked inner.
Well, and all the gases have burned off, and you're just dealing with hot carbon.
Yeah, exactly. But in space, what happens with these things is they have this that happens, and then they're perpetually shrouded with all of this dust and debris that is created by their ignition, which never is able to settle into anything. And so they can be observed in the infrared, but in terms of the visible light spectrums, which is an incredibly narrow band, there's something that, no, you're not going to see them until they're fairly close in, and that's the case with this. Now, what I do with the testing, and this article that I just put up is Planet X nearing perihelion. There are a lot of folks, even other researchers out there, and it's very nice to hear. And they compliment me on my image analysis method, which I do is called gamma testing. And gamma testing is something we can do with digital images. You cannot do it with celluloid images, with film. And so with gamma testing, it's like, you have a stereo system, and you can set your different frequencies, highs, lows, bass, treble, all these things, and you can play around with all that. But then you have the big volume knob, and when you turn that down, turns down everything. When you turn it up, turns up everything. But there are some things that'll stand out. So you turn down the volume knob, you're listening to Bee Gees or something, and what do you get? Boom, 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 boom. You're getting the bass drum. You're getting something that can really punch through in that very limited, amount of power. Well, when I'm doing gamma testing, what I'm doing is just like on your stereo system. You're just cranking down the volume until all you hear left is the drum, or the, what other instrument can get past it. Now, in terms of images, that gets them down to, I reduce them down to hot images and cold images. And a hot image is one that is generating light into the lens of the camera. All right. Our sun is a hot object. It generates light directly into the camera lens. Now, cold images are lens flares and other forms of aberrations. And lens flares and aberrations are simply misdirection of other light sources. And so when you crank down the volume, because they're not generating, they're not sitting there thump, the thump, the thump, the thump like the bass drum, okay? They're going to fade out. They're going to disappear pretty quickly. And, this is because lens flares are something that are going to happen directly in front of the camera lens or inside the lens barrel itself, somewhere in the prisms. And so what I do is I use gamma, all right, which is purely a digital thing. Again, it will not work if you go out with an old Kodak camera and take a picture. No, you don't have gamma settings with that. Gamma is only something that is new to digital photography. And that's really all you see anymore today. And unless you buy a coffee table book on Ansel Adams. But I just crank the gamma down. And when I crank down the gamma, and if your listeners go to my website at marshallmasters.com, actually you're going to see what a gamma test produces right there in the image that it's right at the beginning, the one where the image says, is Planet X nearing perihelion? That is exactly what a gamma test is. And you're going to see the sun, and next to it, you're going to see another hot object. And that object is has a blue tint to it. The sun has a red tint to it. And this is the reason why I'm saying, is Planet X nearing perihelion? In other words, is it approaching that point in its orbit, which is 3,600 years? It's a long period, elliptical orbit. It spends most all of its time in the southern skies, all right, until it swoops up around the sun. And it's orbiting the sun actually on two axes. It's going up and down like a yo-yo, but this yo-yo is steeply inclined. And at the same time, it's going around the sun. All right. And so it's tracking around the sun about every 380 days, opposed to our 365, which is the reason why even the ancients in the Colburn Bible tell us that it dances around behind the sun. We see it, we don't see it, we see it, we don't see it, we see it. But then eventually, as our orbits merge, all right, then we see it. Okay. And it just pops out from behind the sun. So if it's reaching its point of perihelion, what that says is that we're going to start getting into this phase where it is going to pop out from behind the sun so that everybody's seeing it. Now, we have folks that are, reporting videos all the time. And what you have to understand is something that's behind the sun, the only time you're going to be able to see it is near sunrise and near sunset. So I get these folks, debunkers, and they go, well, I went out in my backyard this afternoon and I took a look. I didn't see anything. Well, of course you didn't see anything because the sun's too bright and you're not going to see it. And they don't understand that sunrise, sunset, simple difference. And the point I'm making in this is I have been tracking Nemesis, and I've been doing it for a very long time.
This picture, which will be on the video, so people can see the picture right now.
Right.
Is Planet X nearing perihelion. Are you sure this isn't Mercury or some kind of gravitational reflection?
No, it's not Mercury. I mean, you go into, the easiest thing to do is you just go into solar system scope, and people can go online and do that. But I actually use Starry Night Pro, and that's the program that I use for this. And I go and look, but I mean, I've been looking, at Venus and Mercury for a long time. And I want to tell you, Venus and Mercury do never look that big, period. Okay? And I've seen them in the gamma testing, so, I mean, for me, it's like, I will do this. I'll go to Starry Night, but, I already know it's not Venus or Mercury or something else because it's a hot object. All right. If it's something else, then it'll be a cold object and it won't pass muster with the gamma test. Now, the interesting thing is we're continually tracking this object, which is to the sun's 3 o'clock relative to the horizon. Now, out in space, the ecliptic, the plane of our solar system, puts that more up, say, around 1:30, okay, relative to the sun. But we see it at 3 o'clock because the Earth is tilted. All right. And so our horizon is not the same thing as the ecliptic, the plane of our solar system. I have a video, Planet X System Update number 4, and actually it's in that article and people can watch it. And we have from Spain, Brazil, and other places where we're tracking the same object in the same exact place at different times of the year. Every case, it is not Venus, it is not Mercury. Those are very small relative to this.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Sagan.
Oh, God, you're... Okay, so you want billions and billions and billions of facts.
Nope, just an extraordinary one.
Okay.
Is this gamma shot your extraordinary evidence?
I think that I'm doing the best that I can being that I don't have the resources of a government and I'm just relying on what you have. But there are, in my videos, when I put up something in my video, it's like, it's a challenge to debunkers, you know, disprove this. So in that regard, if you see it in one of my videos, yeah, it's extraordinary.
Basically, you're saying there's a conspiracy by NASA to cover this up.
Oh, yeah. And it goes much higher than NASA. It goes much higher than NASA.
I just watched the movie Interstellar. Actually, I haven't seen the last 30 minutes, so don't blow it for me. But
oh, no. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I won't do that.
Fantastic show so far, right?
It is. Oh.
I'm just riveted, and I have to take breaks because I have to cool off. It's just too much. Are they just not telling us about Planet X because, just like in Interstellar, they didn't think that panic made any difference?
Well, in Interstellar, oh, golly gee, I can't answer that question because you haven't seen the end of the show. I'm not going to kill it for you. But let me, and I do love that. I've probably seen that movie a dozen times. I just do enjoy it. And I especially love, you know, the human angle that they put on it. Now, the reason why we're not being told is we are going to go through a worst case scenario flyby. Now, this has been well documented in the Colburn Bible, which is an ancient wisdom text, and the first parts of it were written about the same time as the 5 books of Moses. And while the Hebrews were wandering in the Sinai, and it tells us that the sinking of Atlantis, Noah's flood, and Exodus were all the result of flybys of this mini constellation system through the core of our system. And the reason why you have some that are best case scenario and worst case scenario, I mean, they're all going to hurt. But there's a particular part, a segment of this orbit, which is from its point of perihelion to where it arcs down to the ecliptic, the plane of the system. And when it does, it comes up and it'll pass over our heads. And when it crosses the ecliptic, it'll do it between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. And this is the phase of the orbit that's very destructive for us. I call it the kill zone. And during Exodus, Earth was on the opposite side of the sun while Nemesis was in the kill zone when it crossed the ecliptic. This time, we're going to be on the same side of the sun. And the last time that happened was Noah's flood. All right, so we are going to have a pole shift event. And for those that are, you know, read their Bibles. And to me, the Bible, I treat it as a wisdom text. And in that regard, there's a tremendous amount of preparatory information in there about what's going to happen. Days of darkness is something that is definitely going to happen because while Nemesis at the ecliptic is between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, its outermost planet, Nibiru, will be passing between Earth and the Sun, somewhere between the orbits of Earth and Venus. And when that happens, it's, you know, when we have, you know, it's just simply going to be so massive, so large that when it passes in front of the sun, it's going to completely blot out all of the light. And then we're going to have a period of pitch black that is going to be quite disturbing. And then this is when the pole shift's going to happen, because then several bodies in this system will gain a what I call lithosphere lock on the surface of our planet. And that will then cause the shift. And you have a magnetic shift, and then you have a crustal shift. We're already in the process of a magnetic shift. All right. And that's the reason why they're having to go out and renumber at airports, the runways, because the runways are all set on magnetic compass settings, and those are changing. And so they have to repaint those and republish. And this is, when you look at what's happening, it's moving around a lot more. So the magnetic pole shift is in its early infancy beginning to do. Then also we would have a flip of the magnetic poles. All right. So where north is now south and south is north. And that's going to happen. This has happened in the deep time history of the planet. And there are those that say it takes, tens of thousands of years for that to happen. But they have found basalt flows, all right, volcanic basalt flows, where they could see that a magnetic reversal occurred in just simply maybe a matter of hours or days. So we're up against it with a really negative flyby. We're going to have a worst case scenario. Now, during the pole shift event, the story of Noah's flood, what we learned, there's almost 200 different deluge accounts. All right. Once you get out of the Bible and it's no longer Noah's flood, it's called the deluge. And the deluge was really the big slosh, because what happens is when the lithosphere of the planet moves, all right, the water is just going to slosh up onto the continents. All right. And you saw that in the movie 2012. They demonstrated, what that looks like, and those huge waves coming in and hitting and just, taking out vast amounts of shorelines. Well, most of humanity lives along a shoreline or within 50 miles of it. And these are all going to be death zones. So what the elites really want to do is they want to reduce. This is a eugenics agenda. They want to reduce the population because it's really difficult to manage 7 billion people. You don't need 7 billion or 8 billion people to live like a prince and to be a god on your own planet. You can do it with a lot fewer people, and it's a lot easier to manage. So they're suppressing knowledge of this, not because they don't want to cause a panic, all right? If they were to make it, people, they would start moving inland, things would be shifting. That would not be good for their investments, and they're not going to be able to buy as many yachts and big yachts and have their little junkets and fun and do whatever they're doing. But you're going to have more people surviving the event, which means in a time when they're going to have to regain control of the planet. We do live on a slave planet. When 1,000 people own 90% of the world, okay, that's a slave planet. When, you can count the number of people on both hands that control as much wealth as the third poorest of the world's population, that's a slave world. Period. Let's not put happy faces on it. My God, here in America, half of all Americans, over half of all Americans, do not have the money in the bank right now to write a $500 check. That's a fact. We're all strapped and we're living paycheck to paycheck. So, and where's all this wealth? It didn't evaporate. It went into the hands of those that are controlling. So during this tribulation period, there's going to be a destruction. And one of the things that's going to be destroyed is all of these elaborate control systems that the elites who run the world, like puppeteers, all of their control systems are going to be completely and utterly shattered. Now, they're going to be living in their deep underground bases that are 1 mile to 2 miles deep. And they're going to live very well. And these things were, the money is that they sponged out of us in any number of different ways is what's fueling the building of these things. All right. And you have they come out and they go, gee, you know, we just lost billions and trillions of dollars. We don't know where they went. What do you know? That was what a big accounting error, you know? I mean, it's like, if you said that to the IRS, they'd laugh at you and then nail you for everything you got, including your genetic code. And so they're going to be in their deep underground bunkers, and they have their seed vaults and storages and whatever. And so their plan is when things start settling down, and they'll know when things are going to settle down, they're going to come up to the surface and see who's left. Now, Georgia Guidestones tell us that, you know, this is a 10 Commandments for the 21st century. Some call it that. And it's written in 8 different languages. And the first one says, keep humanity under 500 million. Well, it doesn't tell us how we get there. It doesn't tell us how 9 in 10 of 90% of us are going to perish in what's going to come. It just says, keep it under 500 million. In other words, once you're there, you're there. Don't let the population exceed 500 million for the whole world, and live in harmony with nature. Well, that's what's, you know, the vast majority is along the shorelines. And when I look at people who are in denial, I mean, the 3 big reasons people are going to die during the coming Planet X tribulation is denial, procrastination, and location. Those are going to be the 3 principal causes of death. All right. Again, denial, procrastination, and location. If you can get people to deny